It's that time again, friends. Rebuilds is back with another original build. In this video I will be showing you how I found the inspiration to build this trash-made sculpture.
Rebuild Studio 39.
I'm building a character, so I already chose this to be the core trash piece. His name is lovingly Blocky Boy, for now. I say that because this boy's journey will forge him into the character known as Ramos the Butcher. Let me take you through the process that I go through when I need ideas or inspiration to build things. What I like to do is go dig up some inspirational juice by looking up several different things across all medias, because inspiration can come from anywhere and from anything. I started with, of course, Rebuilds' favorite game of all time, which is
One Ring to Rule Them All.
I often look through this book for inspiration because I love it, but let's keep this look-see a little short. These pulse droids were speaking to me because if you look closely to this one, its torso looks almost identical to our core piece. So if I had a list of what I wanted for the build, I would write down Robot Guy or some type of futuristic character. But I didn't stop there. I went digging around in my trash pit to see what I had and what would inspire me to get more ideas flowing. I found this, and when I held it up to Blocky Boy, it was a perfect shield for him. So with this new idea, I could refine the simple idea of futuristic character to a futuristic knight or warrior that still uses a sword and shield, which I thought was interesting and different. The next inspirational moment came when I read this from the Bible. Quote, "If any man will come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me." Matthew 16:24. The idea I got from that was let's have him carry something. And Blocky Boy is posable, so let's take advantage of that and pose him with something. This also ties into his storyline, but more on that later. For the list, I'm going to add a cross to the build quota. And with that, I had enough ideas to start building. Starting with Blocky Boy, he needs a quick and dirty armor set made from trash plastic that was cut in made-up shapes that fit pretty good with his blocky body. I really didn't think much about the armor, I just copied what I did in the Resident Evil Knight build. Next is more quick and dirty armor in the form of a layered skirt armor. I don't remember what the name is for these pieces, so I'm just calling it skirt armor. Whoa, that looks horribly uneven. But instead of ripping it all off, let's pretend that I did this on purpose, because I was thinking about how I was going to pose this guy later. Let's make a belt. I used crafting foam for the belt shape, then I used a paper clip for the buckle part, I guess. Hey, let's rip his arm off and cut his hand in half to make room for these claws that came from a He-Man toy. With the claws attached, I added a Lego piece to finish off the hand. This is a hand, by the way, and I'm making a robot arm. I forgot to mention that. Moving on, I took Blocky Boy's existing forearm and cut it in half because I just needed a bit of it. I attached some wire to the hand. This will run through the entirety of the arm for strength. I glued on one half of the forearm, but as for the rest of the arm, I wanted to plunder my trash and or Lego graveyard for some interesting bits. I have a lot of choice bits here, but what can we use for the forearm? Oh, this will be perfect. After drilling a hole through it, I glued it on. I found this cool circle bit, and I think this will be a perfect piece for the elbow. Well, perfect after I add this toy gear. Next, I use this Bionicle arm, and yes, this is from my childhood Bionicle Lego set that I got for Christmas about 20 years ago. Don't get mad at me, the set didn't survive my childhood. Which is sad, but that does give me legal right to use it for crafting. After gluing on said part, I finished off the arm with more bits of toys from my childhood. For For the robot foot, I just used some random bits that were mostly Lego, but the toes were plastic from a vacuum cleaner. I switched to the lower right leg. I wanted to also make it robotic, so I started by gluing 3 Lego rods together. Then I added some armor plates, which were crafting foam cut into squares, layered on top of each other. I also added some strapping for extra detail. Next, let's Jamie Lannister him. The hand you see was made off camera because I actually built it for another project and didn't end up using it. So sorry, no tutorial on how I put it together, but I think I used a bead and a hair clip. I think Blocky Boy is pretty decked out with armor, but he's missing a face, so let's make that next. If you're not good at sculpting something as difficult as a face, well, do what Rebuilds does. Cheat, and here's how to do it. Remember the Bionicle from earlier? Well, here's his face. It looks silly now, but keep in mind that I only want the top half. So let's perform a rhinoplasty. You might see Lego murder, but I see that the sculpting is already halfway done, and I haven't even used the clay yet. Speaking of clay, what type to use? I usually use Super Sculpty oven baked clay, but we can't bake Blocky Boy, so the alternative will have to be air dry clay, mainly because that's all I have. Hashtag poor but beautiful. After I glued the face on, I prepared the surface with tacky glue to help the clay stick to the wood. This clay is tricky to sculpt, but I found that dipping the sculpting tool in water every now and then helps tremendously. Since I have zero skill in sculpting, I'm going with a bearded Blocky Boy. That way I don't have to worry about a mouth, chin, or any other part of a confusing human face anatomy. The lesson here, kids, is if you're not skilled enough, just cover it up with a Santa beard. That will solve all your problems in life. Don't forget the bushy eyebrows. That will totally not fall off the moment you stop filming. Okay, when it was all done, this is what it turned out to be. Blocky Boy has certainly aged quite a bit. This needs to dry for 24 hours, so let's set it aside and work on some accessories. Let's build the futuristic shield. Now, some of you LEGO veterans have probably noticed that this LEGO is the pod LEGO set that C-3PO and R2-D2 rode down to Tatooine. But once again, these LEGO sets didn't survive my childhood. To make this shield, I basically glued together a bunch of random Legos that looked futuristic to me. I glued on some rhinestones as rivets and I called it done. I wanted it to look futuristic and I think I achieved that. Why did I say futuristic like 3 times in that sentence? Whatever. As for the sword, I cut out some thick plastic and sanded it into a pointy shape, then murdered some more Legos to make the handle. As you watch Rebuilds burn a poor Lego to death, I thought it would be a perfect time to remind you Lego fans, like and subscribe. The sword came out pretty good. However, soon after, it disappeared off my desk, and it remains missing to this day. I wonder what happened to it. I went ahead and made a second one that actually came out better than the first one, and the shield and sword was done. The clay is now dry and it came out perfect. No cracks and no fingerprints. All he needs is paint, but later. Let's add some detail, starting with a canteen because he exists on a desert planet that I just decided on. I made it out of, you guessed it, junk, and the only notable thing was I attempted to sew the foam pouch together, but I quickly gave up because the needle was too big. So super glue was a better option. Next I found this toy grenade and I thought, why not? I made some pouches for his belt. They were made out of ready board and crafting foam. Alright, with all that made, we can glue it onto the boy, starting with the pouches. I do regret kinda gluing on the grenade and scope. I should have painted them first, but whatever, it's done. I glued on the canteen, and I really love how it all looks. Next, I added some things that I forgot to, like the elbow and knee armor. I wasn't going to add shoulder armor, but I thought it would look good over his robotic arm, so I made some leather-esque armor. It's foam, but it will look like leather when painted. With that, Blocky Boy has made the transition to Ramos the Butcher. Let's crab walk right into the very first ever painting session that Rebuilds finally didn't screw up. First, some texture. I mixed up a very simple texture slime, which was baking soda and Mod Podge. I applied it basically all over the place, being as sloppy as possible. This texture paste will give us a perfect painting surface when dry, and it will create some nice detail after painting. Once dry, we can apply the base coat, and if you're a long-time viewer, first, let me say thank you very much, and you know I love a good black base coat. Doesn't that look good? For the actual main color, I'm thinking Ramos is a rusty boy, so a lot of browns are about to be used. I started with a quick paint of all the quote-unquote leather with a brown just to see where I want the next color. Speaking of colors, here's a nice rust brown. I'm using it on all the armor or metal parts because I'm thinking layers. Next color is a lighter version of the first. I'm not painting this color on, but kinda dabbing it on, being careful not to cover the previous color. Basically, I'm layering rust with rust. The last time I painted something rusty, I mistakenly put down the metallic color first, when it would have been easier to do the rust first, like I'm doing right now with Ramos. But let's not just put the armor color on, let's layer it with a darker metallic first. Once again, I'm using the dabbing technique, trying not to cover up all that beautiful rust. Okay, one more color, a silver metallic. This is actually what the armor looked like brand new, but Ramos is a boomer, and so is his armor. I can already tell this is one of the best, or the best paint job I have done on this channel so far. Moving on, I'm painting the arm and leg with the same colors, black, rust, and then a dry brushing of silver metallic. I didn't like how the leather looked. It looked too one note, so I added a lighter brown to it. Next, I painted the sword and shield in the same color scheme, but I wanted the sword blade to stand out, so I painted it green, but the first green is just a base coat for the main green, which is a beautiful metallic. I'm totally getting Green Destiny vibes. The last thing to paint is the face and beard, and I kept it simple. I used a cream color for his head, and for the beard, I used several grays that got lighter with each coat until I was satisfied with the look. I ended up not liking how his skin was looking, so I went in with a lighter cream color and dabbed it on just to create some variety in the color. But I wasn't done. I wanted to give his skin a little more life, so I applied a burnt sienna wash to it. And once that dried, painting Ramos's ugly mug was done.
My move at last! Now make your move, if you dare! You thought you could defeat me, didn't you? You should have known that's no easy task.
Since I can't beat Mouse Miku, I'm going to destroy this cursive game and build the cross out of it. I started by drilling holes and inserting toothpicks for strength. I glued each piece together end to end until I had the biblical shape. Once I had the shape, I wanted a little more beef to it, so I doubled it. Next, I added some exaggerated wood grain lines with a very sharp crafting knife. But be careful or else you'll cut your hand like Dum Dum Rebuilds did. After a quick bandage, I finished and went right into painting. First a dark brown, and when it was dry I used a lighter brown just for a little spice. Then I dry brushed it with khaki, and I called it done. Let's make a quick base. I cut out a roundy shape of pink insulation, and since I'm going to be covering it with sand, I laid down some protection for my desk. Then began mixing up a batch of texture slime, and the ingredients were water, baking soda, sand, Mod Podge, some glue, and tan-colored paint. I mixed the slime paste up and applied it to the base, making sure to cover up all the foam. It looks like I'm literally spreading peanut butter or Dijon mustard all over the foam, making the worst cake ever. Before it was dry, I added more sand just because I could. This needs to dry, so I switched over to making a mushroom stem. That will make sense later. I made the mushroom bones out of tinfoil, and as for its skin, garbage clay returns. I covered up all the tinfoil, and after that I textured the stem with a sculpting tool. This also removed any of Rebuilds' dirty fingerprints. Once dry, I Mod Podged it, then painted it a gray color that I didn't end up liking very much, so black wash time. The mushroom stem was done, or should I say the dead mushroom stem is done. Okay, the base is dry and we can continue. I applied some flocking before placing the shield in the hole that was made for it. Then I placed Ramos on the base in the desired pose. Next came the cross, then the dead shroom. I mixed up some flocking slime and applied it around mostly Ramos. And with that, the build was done. Oh, hello. Glad you stayed until the end. As I mentioned before, I was inspired to write Ramos' story from that Bible passage. Matthew 16:24, I believe it was. I liked it a lot, and I got the idea to write a story about a man at the end of his life who has a chance to do one good deed before he kicks the bucket. I hope this video showed you that inspiration can literally come from anything. I made this video from just a few ideas that I built upon over the course of a few weeks. I used what inspired me to build Blocky Boy, and once he was built, I wrote him a full story that was too big to fit in one crafting video. So, if you were wondering, I will continue his story in other crafting videos. So this video is part 1 of at least 2 or 3 parts, or even more, I'm not sure. So if you liked this video, give it a like, and if you enjoyed the story and you would like to support Rebuild Studio, well, just hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on our next video. As always, it's been my pleasure to hopefully brighten up your day with this video. Always remember, be kind, rewind, and I'll see you in the next one. Later.